Welcome you all. This is Baron Baptiste. Welcome to Disrupt the Drift. We love hearing from you. Send your questions, comments, concerns, anything to Disrupting the Drift at baronbaptiste.com, Disrupting the Drift at baronbaptiste.com. David, how you doing today, buddy?
Fantastic. As usual, always better to be here with you.
Yeah, always good, man.
Yeah.
So I had a topic top of mind. I brought it up to you earlier, and that's just about weak people. I've had several conversations this week with different people, and it seems to be a conversation out there about people feeling weak. The world there's an underlying force, I think, that's pulling on people, and people are feeling anxious, and from anxious to all the way to despair. And there's a lot of fear in the air. There's a lot of just psychological, mental, spiritual fatigue and even hopelessness. But I wanted to talk about weak. What is it? Because you hear this term, being a weak person. And I have my thoughts about it because a human being, what does it mean to be weak? What is it to be strong?
Oh,
because the world we're living in, if you're weak, whatever that is, the world will consume you. You could lose yourself.
I suppose,
and I think a lot of people are in that experience of having lost themselves.
I suppose there's a number of different levels of weak and strong. And of course, I believe that weakness comes from being suggestible. And most people are suggestible. As a matter of fact, most people are very easily influenced by other people's ideas. And if you look at the concept of allowing yourself to be moved in one direction or another, either emotionally, intellectually, and mentally, that is a kind of weakness that if you're not aware of it, you will end up feeling totally out of control and vulnerable and confused and directionless because you didn't come into this world to be a lemming. You came into this world to discover your unique identity, that you can listen to other people and you can take, how can I say this? You can take suggestions from people, but ultimately the bottom line is you have to own the things that you choose or choose not to do. And if you don't, then you're allowing yourself to be controlled. And I've often said that if you're not in control of yourself, someone or something else will be. And it could be anything that's in charge of you. If you take a look at people that have issues with substances and food and using different kinds of things to make themselves feel less vulnerable and more comfortable and more, how can I say it, under control, those are all symptoms. Really are not the problem. The problem is that they've lost control, they gave up control, and much of the control is a hypnotic control. And the only way hypnosis works is if you surrender your will and allow other people to get inside and become your compass.
Yeah. Something I know is about people is they get lost in things. They get lost in others. When they're engaging or interacting with others, they get completely lost in that interaction, that exchange. They buy into. I went to a Bill Maher. Is that his name? Yeah, Bill Maher was doing a live event. A friend invited me last night, and I go to this event, and there were a few thousand people, and I'm in the theater watching, and he's a comedian up there, and he's talking about politics and all this stuff, but I'm watching people around me, just in the audience, and people get so lost in what the speaker's saying, but it's almost like they vacate and they enter this kind of vacuum where they lose themselves in what's just happening in the moment. And I just step back and I realize it's being present and there's a power in never really losing yourself, never losing your objectivity, that higher witness, the ability to be present and not lose yourself. People lose themselves in everything, and then they're left in this experience of lost themselves, and they wonder why. And then they've got all the forces that rise up in that vacuum, that space, of having lost yourself, the anxiety, the fear, the uncertainty, the confusion, the inability to make a decision, the inability to see straight, to see reality. And because it's a practice to stay present. But I also want to distinguish weakness from humility, because often people think humility is weak. But to me, when you give up all of your opinions and you give up your points of view and your attachments to certain things, you start getting more present to yourself. And there's a humility in that where you can engage and you're really there listening, you're present to what's happening, but you're not losing yourself in it all. But humility as a point of strength and a humility to something greater than yourself. I don't know if it's a mantra, but it's like conscience, being led by conscience, like creator, God, conscience, and then the environment from around me, from God, creator, conscience, to whatever I'm engaging with in life. If I'm producing something or in the process of engaging with another, a person or a thing, or I'm not losing myself. I'm still connected to something within myself, something higher. And the flow is from above to me, flowing outward, rather than life flowing from the outside in and being lost in it all. You lose yourself in it all.
Marcus Aurelius said this about strength. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. So again, if you're the effect of some cause on the outside, that is an indication of some weakness. In other words, allowing influences to lead you. And so what are we talking about? First of all, strength, I believe, begins when you acknowledge your weakness. Most people don't like looking at their weaknesses. And most people don't like looking at their vices. They like believing that it's their own idea. When somebody becomes absorbed in something, it's really interesting. You mentioned that you went to see Bill Maher, and those couple thousand people that were in the audience, those are people who are like followers. They want and they rely upon other people to validate them in whatever positions that they've taken. Bill Maher is a very kind of, I don't know, he's a horrifying person in a way, because
without getting into him,
yeah,
there's a principle. Before you can get into him if you want to, but there's a principle there, right? Because it's everywhere. Whether it's a speaker up on the stage or a guru or a leader or an influencer. When I was younger, I would go from guru to guru and teacher to teacher. Right. I was looking for something outside of myself and something that I thought, oh, if someone has something that I don't have. But at a certain point, and whether that's a comedian or a Bill Maher type, but it could be anyone. And if you're looking to others to find something in yourself, you'll never find it. Self-help, personal development. There's some nice tools in those practices or modalities. Sure. But they're an empty vessel at the end of the day. They're not, when you make anything outside yourself God, you lose yourself. Because really, there's God within and above, but it's within, it's not out there.
I was going to say only about Bill Maher is that he's honest about his dishonesty. He's honest in the sense that he wants to believe that there are no consequences for being wrong and for being morally wrong.
And that's most human beings.
That's
my point. It's a principle almost, right?
It is.
Most people aren't accountable for themselves, or like what you brought up earlier, their own weaknesses. When I have something going on in my life, I'm like, it's my fault. It's the first place I look. People don't like taking that kind of stance. What do you mean it's my fault? But when you really look, it's if you're letting anything or anyone influence you, that's on me. And if I don't like it, the outcome there, because you can follow someone for years. People all the time are cancel culture. Like they follow leaders or they follow self-help gurus, and then they realize it's an empty package, but they're still blaming the people out there. It's that'll always be an empty package. It's good to know that and stop looking for answers on the outside when the only real place is on the inside, and to something higher, greater than yourself. Though there's a submission to something greater than yourself.
Yeah.
Whether that's Jesus or the Christ or Creator, there's something greater than yourself that you have access to from within yourself. And until you start developing that relationship, you're like a leaf in the wind out there being blown around.
I was thinking about this thought this morning early, and something that I was contemplating that I'm having a difficulty with. But what occurred to me was, I get what I deserve. In other words, I'm not looking at the source of the problem. I'm looking toward myself. And what came to me was, I'm getting what I deserved. And then the question goes to, why do I deserve it? And then you can get into the core motives of what it is that caused you to be a certain way, or to do a certain thing, or to not do a certain thing. And usually at the core of a motive of you getting what you deserve one way or another is a certain degree of selfishness and self-servingness. And that's what occurred to me about this thing I was contemplating. But see, most people don't like the idea that they are wrong. And so they find justifications for why they do the things that they do or don't do. The question then goes to the moral conundrum. And the moral conundrum is, what if I could have done something and I didn't? What if I could have said something and I didn't? And so it could be something that you didn't necessarily do that brought about what you deserve, whatever it may be, the misery, the suffering that you're going through right now. What if it's something you didn't do? And then the question, is there a justification for you? Do you get a pass? Is there a place where you get a pass? Maybe I didn't know that I could have done something. Or maybe I didn't know what to do at the time, and then it occurred to me way after the fact what I should have done. But to get honest with yourself is the key to moving forward and not repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting some kind of a different outcome. Because if you repeat the same fault, if you repeat the same mistake, you're going to have variations of the same outcome.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring up deserving. And I wonder about that, because I think there's two sides to that. There's, if I have the point of view about myself that I'm a piece of shit, then almost anything and everything I do, I will deserve it because I'm a piece of crap.
But if you say, why am I a piece? See, there's the second component. It's not good enough to stop there.
No, that's one point. I'm getting to the other side of it.
Yeah.
So if that is my point of view, then there's that. Then there's doing things that, if you do harm to others, if you are lying and stealing and cheating your way through life, you get what you deserve. But I think you could take it even out of deserve. It's certain things you do create certain results. It's almost like math in a way.
That's
like
right.
Spiritual math.
You're absolutely right.
It's output and input.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start becoming more objective and less in that subjective, I'm no good, or I'm a piece of crap, or I'm worthless, or I'm through that lens that will always deliver the results that deserves, that point of view of yourself deserves. Then as you get more objective, you start saying, okay, I'm doing these things. Like I have morning practices I do, like practice meditation and physical movement. And I cold plunge every morning, and I do different things and eat certain ways. And I know that produces certain results objectively. Like objectively, there's something that living that way. If I were acting and living different types of habitual patterns, I'd get different kinds of results in life. But I think there's something about way you live life, the like living life as lived moment to moment, that from where are you coming from? I think is my point. Where are you coming from in your flow of life? And what is your greater, just coming from also pure motive? Are you really there in life, not only living for self, but also in a way that contributes or enhances the environment around you and others around you? And you were talking earlier before we jumped on here about, you didn't use the word legacy, but it's like, what am I leaving behind in my life?
How did I affect the world?
How do you affect the world?
Yeah.
Because we do affect the world. And I think that has in the kind of yoga thinking that they'd call that karma or something. I think it's much greater than that. I think it's actually living from higher purpose and to become who you were born to be, as you brought up.
Yeah.
When you're living in that kind of alignment to your North Star, there's a different kind of outcome in life and a different kind of sense of self that I would call strength. Because I notice when I'll call it weaker, when I was like lost in people and looking for a guru and teacher to teacher and self-help and self-development, those types of things, I was weak. I was very influential. Like what you brought up earlier about being impacted by your environment, and you're like a bottle being tossed around in the sea. But when you start living for truth and in truth and telling the truth and lining up to your Northern Star way to be and as right and to do what's right moment to moment, is this given by your heart or your conscience, you start dealing, your life doesn't impact you in the same way as life impacts you, but you start having less concern about what people think about you. People pleasing, that term fawning, people get caught up in. I read somewhere that somewhere in psychology, they've updated the fight and flight responses. Have you seen this?
No.
And it's fight, freeze, flee. And they've added a fourth, which is now fawning. And fawning is people pleasing. You can get so lost in people pleasing and managing perceptions of people and being seen as a good person. But to the point where you are weakened because you lose your own inner compass and that guiding light, and you're living again from the outside. You're living in this fight or flight. And it weakens your soul. It weakens your character. And then you become very vulnerable to what people think of you. So you're now not acting out of yourself. You're acting out of, what did you say earlier? You said a perfect phrase. It's better to be disliked for who you are.
Yeah, than liked for who you are not.
Than being liked for who you are not.
Yeah.
And I think you're on track when what people think about you means less to you. We all want people to like us, fine, and we want to be appreciated. But I think for good works, and that means it may be a few that relate to you, but you relate to yourself and who you're being is true, even if you're in the face of disagreement and dislike. And people will say terrible things about you. But they're already saying at least thinking terrible things about you, but maybe not being honest about it. Or they're on social media just being trolls. Snitches and bitches. Yeah.
Yeah. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself, him or herself." You cannot be free. And then there's another good one here by Seneca, which says, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man or woman perfected without trials." And so I think a lot of people, they grow up in an environment where there are problems that they resent. Most people don't have a perfectly functional family. Most of us have come from dysfunctional families at some level. And we are the end result of what happens in that family. And then if we resent what happened to us as children, and most people do at some level, we try to avoid replicating that because we don't like what happened to us, and therefore we say, I'll never be like that. And so we go around arranging our lives around compensating in a way which makes us believe that we are not just the sum total of our experiences, that we are not compelled to repeat the same things that happened to us.
We're not them. We're not those people. We're not our mom, not our dad, but it's a reaction, right? And then the compensation
exactly
to be in opposition is still a reaction.
Yeah. And you
it's
can't
not
be
coming to your natural self.
That's right. You can never be your authentic self if you are compensating and struggling with experiences and circumstances that you had no control over.
Yeah.
And that's super important to understand, because if you think about it objectively, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose, if you know that you can choose, how we respond to them. That was Epictetus.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I'll say this. If you're going through a hard time right now, if you're going through hell right now, as Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going. But I think it's more than just keep going. I actually think it might pause, like press pause, slam on the brakes of your mind and get present, get still, get quiet, get connected, come to that still small voice of truth within yourself. It's only through that. I'll call it if you're going through hard times in life, those are the greatest opportunities. They're what I call a crucible moment. A crucible moment is when someone has a transformative experience where they come to a new identity or a new sense of identity. And it's really, even during the pandemic, you saw some people really fold and collapse in and shrink. And then other people use that as manure to elevate, to find a new way in that suffering. Who says it? The Zen or someone says life is suffering. Life is suffering. And they say at some level suffering is optional. I don't know if suffering is truly optional. I think there's suffering, but I think it's what we do with that suffering and the ability to come to, again, humility. And in the crucible moments of life, those hard times, those difficult times when everything seems impossible or it seems hopeless or help is, not available or help's not on the way. It seems like that. But those are the moments where you confront your own soul. You come face to face with your creator, and you have the opportunity to lay down your old ways, like a repentance, where you give up pride, you give up ego, and a new you can emerge in those moments, or these crucible moments. And you discover a new you. And I know in my life and through the different crucible moment points of my life, I'm someone who doesn't quit. I persevere, but not like through force, more like through surrender and letting go and seeing, what am I holding on to? Is there something or someone I need to forgive? I want to come back to my Father, my Heavenly Father. I want to come close. It's an opportunity to come closer. And on the other side of that, you're renewed. What's that biblical saying? Be therefore transformed by the renewing of your mind from within.
Yes.
But I think that those come through those crucible-like moments.
Yeah.
Those points of suffering in life where there's an opportunity to actually open up to who you could be and who perhaps whether you're destined to be, or I don't know that it's destined. That's probably not the right word. But
yeah, one more from Epictetus. He says, first say to yourself what you should be and then do what you have to do. So how many people, they start the New Year's resolutions? The average resolution lasts about 3 weeks. And people go back to their old ways. If you really want to change, know what you have to do. Maybe just one word, or 2 words, stop overeating. Okay? And if you just know that's what you have to do, it makes it easier for you to say, okay, wait a minute, I'm gonna bypass that little extra portion right there. I'm gonna eat a better meal today. I'm gonna have a big salad, whatever it may be. Know what you should be and then do what you have to do. Now, the flip side of that is know what you shouldn't do. And here comes that person who aggravates the crap out of you, and you say, no, I'm not going to react to this person right now. I'm just going to let it go.
Not going to get lost in it.
Yeah.
Not going to get lost in the devil coming at you. You're not going to become a devil and just two devils locking horns. Yeah, it's no locking horns. I'm going to stay present.
Yeah.
Keep my ears open and watch and listen. And if there's something to say it, if there's something to do it, not attached to outcomes, not attached to winning and having your way, but look for the way.
Yeah. Here's one from Seneca on that note.
Yeah.
True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. How many of us are thinking about what's going to happen 5 minutes from now? Or thinking about, why didn't that person call me? Or what should I do now? Do you think they canceled me? Do you think they blocked me? If you start to think how many things can run through your mind, just forget it. If it happens, if it doesn't, if you're trying to make it happen, get your will out of it and just keep putting one foot in front of the other. But true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. I love that.
Yeah. 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 Present. And it's more than just being present. I used to do Buddha meditations and yoga meditations, and the whole thrust there is to get present. But I realized at a certain point, that's not enough. It's to get present to a presence, a greater presence, a presence greater than yourself, but it's a protective kind of presence. It's a presence that has light in it. It has energy. It's got vitality. It's of life force, different than just getting present as your own God, your own captain of the universe, which I think a lot of self-help, personal development stuff it's very secular in that way. It's godless. So it brings you to a point, but then it's an empty package. Doesn't deliver.
Yeah.
Because it has you looking still somewhere on the outside or not beyond yourself. And I think it's opening up to something greater than yourself and having trust. And I think one way through that, two things come to mind. People live in their heads. That's weak. That will keep you weak. Keeping up in your head, and then is torture and suffering living in your head, and you feel weak, and then you start self-medicating, drinking, smoking, sexing, checking out, whatever you do to numb yourself, self-anesthetize, but it leaves you weaker. And so can you walk through the fire and stay awake and realize something greater is present if you wake up to that presence? Yeah. And that's a power, that's a force, that's a protection, nothing else on this earth.
Yeah.
All right. I think this is a good place to wrap.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Appreciate you. We drop these episodes on YouTube twice a week, usually Tuesdays and Thursdays, and at Disrupt the Drift on YouTube. Also on all the podcast platforms, Apple, Disrupt the Drift on those, and be a part of the community. Leave comments. If you're watching on YouTube, leave comments. If you're listening, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate you. And until next time, peace be with you. Stay bold, stay blessed, and stay true.